right, guaranteed successful design. Simple but not easy. All you have to do is make sure you're designing the right thing and design it well. We're going to talk about both of those, not in that order. We're going to start with designing it well. You have to separate your function from your implementation. Humans are really bad at this because we're really excited about talking how we're going to implement it. But if you can describe it or if you can point to it, you're talking about implementation and you've narrowed the focus of what is possible because you're thinking about how to do it, not what it can do for you. Start with that first. Abstract your requirements. Nobody wants about this much hot water and about that much cold water. What we want is the right temperature so that we're comfortable in the shower or in the bath, but we're stuck with this physical implementation of these knobs. Really, though, we want the right temperature and some volume. Once you've got that, you can solve the abstraction. You can do it totally in the abstract, in the math, so we've got hot and cold here, making a little point in temperature space. Or you can look at other disciplines that have solved similar related problems and bring them back into your discipline. And then there's a whole lot of ways to implement that function. Track your assumptions. Your assumptions should be really good friends. You should get to know them really well. You should, treat them like trading cards, and then disrupt them. See what you can do if you add new assumptions. See if you can remove assumptions. Really try to undermine your thinking there. Introduce constructive constraints. My favorite crusade these days is get rid of drop-downs. They're a terrible, terrible piece of UI, and you almost always should never use them. Just don't. We like constraints. People in a garage, a lot of constraints makes you be more creative. It's a really good way to think differently. Think outside the box. You can't. That's why it's your box. If you get with other people, they have boxes too. If the people who look like you, their boxes are going to look like your box, and you don't get a much bigger box. The more different the people you work with are, the more different the collective bigger box is going to be. Data is great. Refining into information is better. You can get some answers out of that. That's even better. Enabling actions is great. Doing it, just completely solving it for people is even better. Work up in the upper end. Taking data and information is good, but you haven't really solved the problem. When you get to glad, then you're good. Architect for use. Menus are not organized alphabetically. They're usually not organized by price. They're not organized by calorie or ingredients. They're organized in the way that the human is going to consume the food typically. It actually turns out it's sort of time ordered. Don't just spew your database onto the screen. Draw a map. Otherwise, you're just building a house without a blueprint, and that's a bad idea. Smart dude. What could possibly... there's going to be edge cases. Things are going to go wrong. Do you remember Google's April Fool's trick or Microsoft's chatbot? Horrific failures because they didn't think about edge cases and real damage was done. Think about the edge cases. Design systems for human inaction. If your system depends on a human doing the right thing, your system's going to fail. Seriously, it's going to fail eventually. This is why we love direct deposit, because it does the right thing when you don't do anything. If you wait for the human to do something, it's going to screw up once in a while. All right, switching tracks, defining the right problem. Keep a bug list and keep a resignation list. Like, man, traffic in Seattle is really, really annoying and housing's really expensive. Oh, well. Or maybe those are things that we can fix. That's how you find solutions, the right problems to work on. Root cause analysis. Actually ask why and dive into that. When you hear the passive voice, people just keep dying in car accidents. We call them accidents. They're not accidents, not in 30,000 a year. That's not an accident, that's a plan. When you hear a passive voice, ask who's doing it. Make a visual map of the market. I saw this, not this one, but one very much like this many, many years ago, and there was a big gap that was filled with things like Twitter and Facebook that didn't previously exist, but in 2008 were coming into being. You can do a really interesting analysis of what exists by making some interesting axes. This is a technique called Wardley Mapping by a guy named Simon Wardley. This is, the future is inevitable. We know how different resources are going to go from being these very custom boutique things to becoming essentially utilities. You can map out entire industries that way. Pursue bigger boxes. We're in a tiny little box. A tiny little box. There's a whole planet's worth of problems out there, and we're not looking, most of us, not very far outside our tiny little box to find the right problems to solve. Tim O'Reilly for years has been talking about working on stuff that matters. What that means is work on things that matter more than money. Not that there's no money involved, but that there's more purpose there. Create more value than you capture, so you're net positive in the world, and take the long view. The next quarter or the next release, not long enough. Here's the best work on stuff that matters recruiting line in the history of technology. This is how Steve Jobs hired John Scully. Scully later fired Jobs. That's beside the point. Brett Victor's an amazing designer. Somebody asked him, what should designers be doing after he ranted that we were doing the wrong things, we weren't focused on the right things. And he wrote this beautiful essay on what technologists can do to combat the single biggest problem we face, which is climate change. It's a wonderful set of resources and about 1,000 good ideas. Go check it out. Thank you.